This week on the WriterCon podcast.
I think the words that always come to mind for me on that are perseverance and persistence, because it's hard to get published today. And we all know how many queries an agent gets in a week. I think, on average, maybe like 100. And it took me a while, and I feel like if you have a manuscript that you're proud of, that you feel that there's something there, it's worth persisting.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Rene Gutteridge, best-selling author of over 30 novels and screenplays.
Hey there, writers. Hope all is well with you and your loved ones. Hope you're writing every day, or whatever your writing process currently allows, and you're happy with the results. As we're recording this, we're a little bit before Mother's Day, but I think it's going to be released a little after. We've had all the graduations that are part of this season, so now it's the season for moms, right? Rene, you're the only mom in this room. I'm curious.
All right.
So tell me, what did your mom think when you announced your intentions to be a writer?
Oh my goodness. Always supportive of my hobby, if you know what I mean. And at the point that I was beginning to talk like I might want to do this for a living, it turned concerned. And as a parent, I understand with both my kids in professions that don't necessarily pay well, you begin to worry. But when my seventh book came out, seventh book, I brought it over to my mom, and she said, I think you may just make it. And it was high praise from my mom. She read every single one of my books and was an avid reader, but she read Stephen King and Dune, and she loved sci-fi. Yeah, totally would not expect Dean Koontz, all that she read in her reading days, and my novels. So that's a cool mom's love.
I bet she loved yours best.
She did like him. She did.
What about you, Jesse? If anything, your profession is even dodgier than ours. How did that go down at home?
Honestly, my parents were both just happy that I was happy. After at least seeing me work here in Tulsa in the nonprofit field and saw how draining that was on me emotionally, they're happy that I'm enjoying myself. So
moms are the best.
That's great. That's good parenting right there.
Yep.
Our interview today is with Nancy Crochiere. For 13 years, Nancy delighted readers with her humorous and very relatable account of family life in her newspaper column, which was called The Mother Load. That's Load. Now she's making her fiction debut with a charming, big-hearted novel about a single mom forced to chase her Elvis-obsessed mother and pink-haired daughter to Memphis to prevent them from revealing her long-lost secret, which you're going to hear more about in the interview. We'll talk to Nancy after the news segment and a brief word from our friends at Draft to Digital.
Hi, this is Kevin Tomlinson with Draft to Digital. Ebooks are amazing, but there's just something about having your book in print. That's why we built D2D Print. We take care of you with free layout templates and formatting, and we can convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound print cover automatically. Come check out D2D Print and all the cool tools we've built for you. Find out more at drafttodigital.com.
Well, let's talk about artificial intelligence. In the past few weeks, we've had a deluge of stories about GPT and other AI programs and the impact it may have on the book world. So I've kind of curated 3 of the most interesting AI stories out of a big field of choices and put them all together in this episode so we can just get to the bottom of this, team. So, for instance, number one, Harper Collins, one of the big five New York publishing houses, is testing AI-generated content. Their CEO, Brian Murray, was at the London Book Fair recently, and he announced that they were experimenting with what he called generative AI for translated and illustrated book projects. He mentioned one test case where they are adapting Harlequin content for the Japanese manga market with AI-generated art based on photographs. So basically, we're talking about a comic book where they're feeding the script and the AI is generating their art based on some photographs that they've suggested, and I suppose the script. He said, and I'm quoting, "You can much more quickly create translation or images to help get your books to market more efficiently." They're also using AI to generate first drafts of marketing copy and manuscript summaries and metadata for retailers. Rene, how do you feel about the possibility of being replaced by a computer program?
Well, I don't like it. And I think everybody should be very alarmed by this. I really do. I think it's kind of fun and games right now. And well, look, they can't really do what we do. But I'm telling you, this is going to devastate the arts if we keep if we begin to tell our society that soulless art is okay.
It's just as good.
Or
even readable.
Well, yeah, but let's say it ends up being good, but there's no heart behind it.
Well, yeah, in English class, we always, used to talk about theme and what is the author getting at? What's the underlying message? Does that even exist when a computer program created the story?
Exactly. It doesn't. It shouldn't, and it should really bother us. I think. As I was telling my friends who are using some AI to work on creative projects, I said, well, you're just training it to do your job. So if you, or you could use your brain and do it yourself.
Right. And that is really dead on, because here's the second story I was going to bring up, which comes from the Washington Post. It turns out that these AI models have been trained by going out onto the web and surveying websites. So, if you've got a website, more likely than not, you've helped train these AI programs. This Washington Post article analyzed one of the data sets used by the biggest chat box and made that data set searchable. So now you can go and see how many websites have contributed. Like I said, possibly your own. You can go see if you're there, whether you want to be there or not. The biggest sites in the data set were Google's patent search and, big surprise, Wikipedia and Scribed. So, Jesse, okay, this is starting to get a little spooky. I have 3 different websites that I contribute to, and I don't really want to be feeding the AI monster. How can they get away with using other people's content to train their AI programs?
I mean, this just goes into the list of problems that America hasn't dealt with as far as like internet privacy goes. And like, we're just never gonna, by the time we realize we should have done something, it's gonna be too late. And, but again, the internet is full of wrong information and bad grammar. So let it learn all it wants, right? Like, the internet is not a perfect resource. It's full of junk and both great things and horrible things. So, it's always just like, how long will it take an AI bot to become racist, right?
If it's scanning the internet,
yeah, but scanning the internet has lots of dark corners, and so I feel like there's always going to be at least roles for the management of these tools. And like, my dream is like, just like when digital, computers could handle making graphics, right, and doing animation. people learned how to use those tools to animate instead of drawing, right? But the computers couldn't necessarily make a animated movie for them. So, like that's the hope. But I'm more on Renee's camp of like we're gonna be ruining a lot of jobs here if we're not careful.
Sure. And the third of the 3 promised articles is about an author who revealed very recently that he has published 40 books, I assume self-published at Amazon this year alone, all of which were generated by AI. Now, these are nonfiction books on various topics like computer programming and project management, but not only are they up on Amazon and he's selling them, the books have superb reviews. I'm not exaggerating. Go check it out for yourself. People seem to love them. So, Rene, does this impact what you were saying before? Are you surprised?
Well, I'm not surprised by it, but I think you've got a copyright issue now. If AI wrote it for you and AI is grabbing content elsewhere, who owns the rights to that content? And that's, part of what is going to have to be worked out in the copyright laws. I think, and also, our public has a hard time discerning deep fake, has a hard time discerning fake news, won't go and do their own research, reads a book, believes everything in it, goes and does that thing. So, anybody is trusting that author that they're using their own knowledge from their own experience. He's not. This should be banned and taken off Amazon or disclosed up front.
Right. Well, at least in this case, if I understand correctly, these 40 books were all written by AI. On the other hand, there's a new novella coming out next month, which is a collaboration, the author says, between a human author and AI. That's coming out soon. It's called Death of an Author, produced by Stephen Marche, Marche, who is a respected writer. Says he used 3 different AI programs to generate it, and now it's going to be published as an ebook and audiobook by Pushkin, which, if you listen to podcasts, you'll know is a very prominent distributor. It was co-founded by Malcolm Gladwell. And get this, the book is going to be listed as being written by Aidan Marcin, which is sort of a cross, I think, between March, the author's actual name, and AI machine. And as if that weren't enough, there's a critic at Slate, her name is Laura Miller, who has read the book, and she says it's, quote, pretty good, with the prose style above average. All right, last chance for either of you to weigh in. Is there anything we can do
I'm gonna cut myself off.
What can we do, Jesse? Then how do we prevent ourselves from being replaced? This sounds like a science fiction movie or something.
It's bad. I mean, it's all like anything that makes some people's lives easier. They are okay. They're okay with it destroying jobs that they don't do. So it's really all about the people whose jobs are in danger, making sure that they make a lot of noise about this. As, for example, the writers are in the TV writer strike that's going on right now. So, I
don't know, scary stuff, but the business has changed before, and I suppose it will again. We'll find a way to survive. All right, Jesse, cue up the music. Let's talk to Nancy Crochiere. Nancy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Okay, here's our traditional first question. If you could give writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think the words that always come to mind for me on that are perseverance and persistence, because it's hard to get published today. And we all know how many queries an agent gets in a week. I think, on average, maybe like 100. And it took me a while. And I feel like if you have a manuscript that you're proud of, that you feel that there's something there, it's worth persisting. And by that, I don't necessarily mean, continuing to send it to agents for, 2 years. You might take it back. That's what I did. I sent it out, queried for a while, then took it back and worked on it, had a developmental editor come in. And when I resubmitted it, I ended up getting an agent very quickly. So I'm all about perseverance and persistence.
Sounds like that work paid off.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say it was a lifelong dream for me. So it was important that it come to pass.
Fantastic.
Well, so this is your first novel, and you're getting really rave reviews from people like Leanne Moriarty, Susan Wiggs, Sarah Haywood. I mean, how does it feel?
Well, naturally, it feels wonderful anytime anybody says something nice about your book. And certainly it feels very validating to have authors who have been New York Times bestselling authors say they enjoyed reading your book. So that has been a very fun part of the process.
Boy, that's terrific.
I bet it is. So tell us, where did you get your inspiration for Graceland?
Well, I have been, it's a multi-generational road trip, mother, daughter, granddaughter, mother, daughter, grandmother. And I have been, of course, a daughter. I've been a mother, and recently was a grandmother. And I'm fascinated by multi-generational dynamics. And Tolstoy was right. Every unhappy family is fascinating in its own way, right? So I had in mind this story where a grandmother and a granddaughter bond over something. And in this case, it's an angry granddaughter who's very mad at her mother. She and the grandmother bond, and they go off on this caper together. And that was how it started. And I hit upon the idea of Graceland as being their destination for a couple reasons. One was that my grandmother character is a washed-up soap opera actress who once had a famous date with Elvis back in 1970 that was sort of a pivotal moment in her life. And so I thought there was a lot of fun and comic possibilities with the idea that she wants to go back to Graceland one more time before she dies. But I also liked the idea of Graceland because of the metaphor, basically, that these women they're all at odds with one another, but each in their own way, they're sort of searching for acceptance and forgiveness and grace.
Right. Nancy, let's talk about that some more. A lot of the people listening to this podcast will be writers and aspiring writers. So character creation, of course, is a big concern. And you have some wonderful, very vivid, fascinating characters in this book, like the one you just mentioned, Olivia. She's your protagonist. She's a former soap opera actress, as you said. But actually, you've done some acting yourself, haven't you?
I have. I've been a background actor, as we say, or an extra in TVs and movies in the Boston area. So yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. You don't get to hobnob very much with the Bradley Coopers and the Jennifer Lawrences, but you get to you get to watch them, and that's as much fun.
Well, did that save some research at least? Because you had experiences to bring to bear for the character?
It absolutely did. Yeah, I had some sense of what Olivia might go through, what it might feel like to have a day on set. I never worked on a soap opera, but I certainly watched enough of them growing up. My grandmother she would watch, I think, every soap opera,
Really?
In the afternoon. It was As the World Turns, Days of Our Lives, Another World. And sometimes if I was home from school, I would watch them with her. So I had a good
my mother
sense.
loved Another World too. I seem to recall being sick or 7 and watch a character had amnesia all summer long or something like that until it finally came back to her at the convenient moment.
Yes, and the plot lines, I think, got even more outrageous in the years after I stopped watching soap operas. I think people are, possessed by the devil, and they have alien babies, and they're, kidnapped by pirates. So I had Olivia enjoy some of those types of adventures. Some of them are mentioned in the book.
That's fun. Okay, so that's Olivia, and then there's Dylan, the granddaughter, who you mentioned. She's the 16-year-old activist with the flaming pink hair. Where did that come from? Or where did she come from?
I had 2 daughters, and so neither of them were exactly like that. Neither of them were flaming pink-haired activists, but I knew something about how teenage mother and daughter interactions go, and Dylan just sort of came forth fully formed and had very strong opinions about everything. She's very impulsive, and that causes a lot of trouble on the journey to Graceland.
Sure. And then last but certainly not least, there is George, who cross-dresses as Jordan. Well, I have to ask, given all that's going on in the world right now with book banning, and we know which books are getting banned most, were you concerned that this character might be too controversial?
I feel almost certain that my book is going to be banned somewhere, and
you and James Patterson.
I will proudly join the likes of Harper Lee and others who have been banned. But no, I've known some people with that identity in my life as friends, and I hadn't seen them represented in literature, and it felt really important for me to have them represented. I wouldn't myself try to write from an identity that I don't have, but I felt very comfortable writing from the perspective of somebody who has had somebody who is LGBTQ, as friends, basically.
All right. Well, and so let's shift a little bit to the writing process, since most of our listeners are writers. And let's ask you the first question we always ask, which is, we used to say, are you a plotter or a pantster? And then we changed it to architect or archaeologist. And then we're just kind of coming up with all kinds of fun
Discovery
names.
writer, yeah.
Yeah, well, if you have your own name for it, we will throw that in the mix. But tell us a little bit about your approach.
Well, I have to say, because Graceland was my first novel, I will be upfront and tell you that I didn't know what I was doing when I started. I didn't know anything about novel writing. And so I would say for Graceland, I was a pantser. I created scenes and put things together. But then, I also took a course at a writing center that we have here in Boston called Grub Street. And it was a year-long course in novel writing. And I had a first draft, and it had a narrative arc and everything when I went into it, but they did help me, that class helped me refine the novel. And so going forward, now that I know more about novel writing, I'm going to try to be more of a plotter, because trust me, to write a 90,000 word novel, you can easily write 700,000 words to get to where you want to with the 90,000.
Yes,
absolutely. Well, I love that you took a year-long course, which I think shows your commitment to learning the craft and loving it and all of those things, and learning structure and how to do it. That just people will be working on their first novel for 2 decades because they never go take a class, or something like that. So I love to hear that. That's wonderful. So what does your writing day look like now? I suppose with this novel, it wasn't necessarily a writing day, but maybe it was. What does it look like now? What did it look like when you started?
I am the worst person to ask that question to. I'm terrible in terms of having a set schedule. I feel like I'm best on a deadline, and so I will have weeks where I get up in the morning and think I'm going to start writing, and there's 15 things that get in the way, and finally in the afternoon when the time is getting short, I'll get down to business. But I have to say that then when I'm on deadline, and I don't know if either of you are a deadline people, but boy, a deadline saves my life. I will then
Really?
have my bottom in the chair 12 hours a day to get everything done. So I don't know if that's very helpful for other writers. I don't necessarily recommend being like me, but
there it is, right?
there it is. Yes.
Well, we can't argue with success, Nancy. I mean, maybe we're all doing it wrong
There
and
you
you're
go.
doing it
Look
right.
at those reviews she's got. Holy smokes.
Absolutely.
So you have been writing for a while now with a novel, but you were doing your newspaper column. You have about 13 years ago, you started that, I think 13, 14, something like that.
It's something I had done it. I had done it for 13 years when my girls were growing up, basically. So, and I haven't been doing it now for about 10 years or so, I think, maybe.
Okay, well, one way or another, what are some of the writing tips or strategies you've picked up along the way?
From doing the columns or the novel or both?
Either way, both.
Well, I write humor, whether in my columns or in this book. It's just, I think I'm wired to see the world that way. There's a lot to worry about in our world, but I tend to want to look on the bright side. And so I would just take notes about things that happened to me in everyday life that were humorous, and I would, develop them into columns, or now I, see if they can find their way into a novel in one place or another. So that would, I guess, be. I'm not a journal person, but I'm definitely a note-taking person.
Mm-hmm. Well, so now the book is out. You're getting fabulous reviews, big rollout. What next?
That's a good question. I have another novel that I have started working on, but it's more in the planning stages. And as we discussed earlier, I'm convinced that this time it's going to have an outline from the beginning. It's going to be carefully planned. I also wrote a screenplay, and that's more your area, Rene, right? Yeah, a friend and I submitted a screenplay to a contest for screenwriters over the age of 40, women screenwriters over the age of 40. And so that was something I did earlier this year. Those two things, and just writing the publicity stuff for Graceland. Those are keeping me busy 24/7 pretty much.
I bet so. Well, I think there are going to be a lot of people very anxious to read your next book because they're really going to love this one. Thanks for being on the podcast, Nancy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, couple quick words before we sign off. The WriterCon retreat is in July in Branson. Small group focus on your work. Get feedback from a small group, one-on-one mentoring, and talks and fun. And trust me, it is a great time. And if you think that might be what you need to advance your writing, then please come join us. Visit the website and learn more about the retreat. And while you're there, take a look at WriterCon, because there's only a few more days left before the early bird pricing will go away. So register now and get the benefit of a much lower price. We've got more than 60 presenters. We've got the best roster of agents ever. We've got all kinds of publishers and author assistants and publicists and much, much more. Come be a part of WriterCon. All right. Until next time, everybody, keep writing, and remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. All right. See you next time.